Hello everyone. In the previous video, we talked about, and it was a presentation on the introduction of the cell, and we talked about different organelles, mainly concentrating on the nucleus, on endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi bodies, and the ribosomes, which were related to the manufacturing purposes. And in this video, we are going to talk about organelles which are mainly which are related to which are basically related to storage, and some are related to digestion, some are related for energy production. And so this would be the main theme of this video. And so let's begin. So in the first part, we're going to discuss about, okay, let's just pick first, just pick lysosomes here, right here, and just have a little bit of discussion about what are lysosomes. So lysosomes are basically another organelles of the cell, which are related, which have basically different functions, but they are what basically they are is that they basically contain a membrane like this, and inside the membrane they have enzymes. And basically the word lysosome is from a Greek one, which means lyso, which means to break down, and soma or somes here, it means body, so break down body. So you're gonna get a little bit of idea of what this organelle does. And what basically it does is that any part of the cell which has been ruptured, or which is damaged, it combines itself to that particle, releases enzyme, and breaks it down, so that its parts are so it basically so that its parts are reused. So it basically helps in uh, recycle recyclation or recycle. So it first helps in recycle, and the other part which it helps in is in digestion. So how does it help in digestion? It's basically quite simple, is that whenever a food particle enters into the cell through the cell membrane, it attaches itself and releases its enzymes, which decompose, which breaks it down, and then the nutrients is released within the cytoplasm. So this main function of the organelle lysosome is basically it recycles, or it attaches, as I said. And in some cases, like in our white blood cell, when the white blood cells engulf bacteria as a vacuole inside it, the lysosome attaches it to it, and it disintegrates it, or it kills it in a sense. So the main function of the lysosome is it recycles, and the second one, it helps in digestion. And if a person is lacking in lysosomes, which we all see cases like this, and in lysosomal storage disease, which we call them actually. And there's one disease which is called the Tay-Sachs disease. It is a kind of disease in which there's a missing of the lysosomal enzymes which digest lipids. So if a person has suffering from Tay-Sachs disease, which means its cell lacks the enzyme which digests lipid, its brain becomes impaired with lipids, and he eventually dies. So a very important organelle to have around. Now the second organelle, uh, which we will discuss, is the vacuole. Right over here. Just let me move this. Yep, the vacuole. And vacuoles are basically mainly predominantly, when you see a vacuole, you're able to, well, vacuole is just basically a membrane, and it also has some enzymes or some solutions or even a waste product. So what basic vacuole is, it stores materials within the cells. And in a plant cell, it's it's visible, you can clearly see it. But in animal cell, its size is small, and they are not found everywhere, they're temporarily. But in plant cell, it's permanent. And that's why if you observe a plant cell in a microscope, the cell is somewhat looks like this. the huge portion of the cell is covered by the vacuole, so that the nucleus is pushed aside a little bit right here. So this one here is the nucleus, and here is the vacuole. The vacuole covers the major portion of the cell, and you can imagine if it covers a major portion of the cell and it absorbs water and solution, it basically helps the cell to enlarge or grow. And the other part is that in some flowers, the chloroplast contains some pigments which attract other insects for pollination, and some plants it even stores poison, which which protects the cell from predators from eating it. And so you might so a thing which I forgot to mention in the lysosomes part is that it basically explains the it basically you can view it as compartmentalization. And what this is just, it basically means that the organelle is stored with enzymes which can which can digest cell organelles, but still the cell is safe from it. So it's the theme of the eukaryotic cell, which is compartmentalization, is that the lysosome contains enzymes, and and the cell is safe from its own enzymes by lysosomes. So this thing I forgot to mention. As we come down to vacuoles, as I said, vacuoles in cells are predominant. It contains solutions, and it helps in different processes, which we discussed earlier. And vacuoles are also found in unicellular organisms, such as the paramecium. Now, in paramecium, we have paramecium. Now, in paramecium, there are vacuoles which are called contractile vacuoles. And what basically the function of this vacuole is, if you ever been in your biology class, your teacher explained what paramecium looks like. Paramecium basically looks like like this, no, sorry, I'm drawing it the wrong way, like this. So it basically looks like a slipper. And what the main function of the paramecium is that, no, sorry, not the main function. The main function of the contractile vacuole in paramecium is that it regulates the water inside the paramecium, as such that whenever the paramecium constantly, it lives in water, so water is it constantly takes in water to regulate, and the water leaves out of the body through the contractile vacuole. If the contractile vacuole, if it was not present in paramecium, it would have, the solution inside the cytoplasm would become thin, and the cell would eventually burst out. So vacuoles, another important organelle in the cell. Now, coming to our next organelle, let's pick up this one, because the chloroplast and mitochondria are somehow related to each other. So let's pick this one. So peroxisome, it's another organelle which main function is, well, its function is that it digests fatty, it processes fatty acids for energy production, and it detoxifies alcohol. Detoxifies alcohol. So it's a C. So this is just a basically simple organelle, and to keep in and to just said, I mean, this organelle was a little bit simpler. Its main function was it processes fatty acid, and it detoxifies alcohol and harmful substances in our body. Now, chloroplast and mitochondria. So just let me So these, so chloroplasts, and to mention, just a reminder, all these organelles are membrane-bound organelles, which means they have a membrane around them. So just for the reminder, just let me cut it here. Now, chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are predominantly are found in plant cells and and other than chloroplasts, we have chromoplasts and leucoplasts, which are chloroplasts, which of the chromoplasts are colored organelles, and leucoplasts are non-colored. They don't have any color, and chloroplast has green color in it. So my main function, what does chloroplast do, Cheyenne? Tell me about it as well. What chloroplast does is that its main function is that it helps in the process of photosynthesis. I mean, without chloroplast, there would be no photosynthesis, and it is one of the most important processes which occur by which we are alive, basically. So a very important process which is done with the help of chloroplast right here. So it helps in the process of photosynthesis, which it stores light energy and converts it into chemical energy. So stores light energy and along with carbon dioxide and water, and it produces glucose, which eventually goes into the mitochondria and is converted into ADP, which is the main source of our energy. So that's why we usually, when you hear people say don't chop trees, because when they go through the process of photosynthesis, so they use carbon dioxide and water, and light, in the presence of light and in the presence of chloroplast, so they produce glucose, which is a sugar, and oxygen. So oxygen, the key thing which is necessary for us. That's why when people say don't chop trees, because of this process. Anyways, so if you look at the structure of the chloroplast, as I mentioned before, chloroplast is a double membrane. It has a double membrane. It's phospholipids, and inside. So if this is chloroplast, I'm just drawing a random shape here, and it's a double membrane. So this is the double membrane right here. Inside the double membrane, the fluid which is present inside the chloroplast is called the stroma. So the fluid is called the stroma. And if you observe within the microscope, you would see that it has stacks, like coins, like arranged in like this. And these are called, each individual coin is called a thylakoid. And the stack of thylakoids is called a granum. And inside a granum, it's the main material which makes the chloroplast. It gives its color, which is which you can view it as a material or a substance which gives the chloroplast its color, and that substance is called the chlorophyll. So, as I mentioned before, chloroplast, its main function is it helps in the process of photosynthesis. This photo means light and synthesis means to make, so it helps to make with the help of light. and very important organelle found in plant cells and also found in some of unicellular organisms such as in algae. So this is what was for chloroplast, and now we'll go to mitochondria. And yes, the thing which I forgot to mention, chloroplast has its own DNA. Yes, you heard me right. It has its own DNA. It lives within the cell. The cell has its DNA, and the chloroplast also has its DNA, which would be the thing which I wanted to mention a little bit later when after we discuss mitochondria right here. So mitochondria. Now, the mitochondria, it is also known as the powerhouse of the cell. Powerhouse of the cell. And why is it called the powerhouse of the cell? Because as I mentioned that in in plant cells they make glucose with the process of photosynthesis, right? But mitochondria is also found in plant cells as well in animal cells. So this glucose right here, if we want to make ADP from it, it goes into the mitochondria where it's processed, and I could make another 3 or 4 videos on this. It's really quite an interesting process, but the main theme is that the glucose goes into the mitochondria where it's processed and it breaks down glucose, eventually forming from glucose, it eventually forms carbon dioxide, water, and it produces energy or ATP. And this process is called, I know you probably heard this before. It's called cellular respiration. Cellular respiration. It's the process in which glucose in the presence of oxygen, which then would be called aerobic respiration, is broken down into carbon dioxide, water, and ATP, which is the currency of energy, or you may think of it as the main source of energy. ADP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate, which means it has an adenine group attached with 3 phosphate groups. So we'll go into detail in another video, but the main theme is about mitochondria. Mitochondria, the key points to remember is it's the powerhouse of the cell. It helps in cellular respiration, and which produces ADP, which is the currency of energy. So huge importance, like it gives basically the energy to cell to perform its various functions. So if you look at the structure of the mitochondria, it looks like looks like this. Trying my best to draw it. And it's just like inner membrane foldings right here. My best attempt to draw mitochondria. Anyways, it has a double membrane right here, and there's a space between the outer membrane and the inner membrane, which is called the intermembrane space. Intermembrane space. And if you see these foldings right here, are called the cristae. And inside the cristae we have the fluid, which is called the matrix. And just for another shock, you may say that this organelle also has its own DNA. Yes, chloroplast and mitochondria also have their own DNA. So that's what basically scientists believe, that at one point these two organelles here, my chloroplast and the mitochondria, were separate prokaryotic organelles, which somehow, like, they went through symbiosis, which is a relationship in which both of the organelles live in association with each other, and so they have their own DNA, which means they can produce their own proteins. So that's a really fascinating thing which I learned, and I hope you find it fascinating too. And yep, that's pretty much it for this video. And in the next video, we're going to discuss about basically the things which give the cell its structure and shape and support, which would be microtubules, microfilaments, intermediate filaments, and that would be interesting too. So hope you find this video useful, and see you in the next video.